Good morning, YouTubers. I've been thinking about alchemy the past couple of days. Alchemy is contrary to New Age talk, and it was not some spiritual thing. It was always pretty physical. Even the philosophical mercury and philosophical sulfur and philosophical fire were physical things. The spirituality angle was hyped by Jung, who was a bit of a phony and had deceiving spirit connections since childhood, and he had this collective unconscious idea he spun off of the dreams of this woman who had symbols and figures in them out of Greek mythology and East Indian mythology, and supposedly she couldn't have this in her mind consciously, but in fact, oops, if you read James Webb's The Occult Establishment, I think it is, or The Occult Underground, I think it's The Occult Establishment. She was, in fact, the daughter of a noted researcher in these areas, and she would have been exposed to all this stuff since childhood. Anyway, she was not a clean slate. He must have known this. Perhaps there's an element of fraud on his part. Anyway, this alchemy had a kind of quasi-spiritual component, to be sure. Hermetic philosophy included the idea of a world soul and some kind of a excuse me, semi-conscious substrate to all matter. Well, if it exists, it is not God. It is just a creature of God's. It's not the Holy Spirit. It's something God made and then made everything else out of it. And the Hermeticists sometimes talked about God and Jesus Christ, but you look at it closely, you can see that they are talking kind of pantheistic Christianity, where they posit a God concept, a God that is manageable, controllable, discoverable, and usable. And it is not a holy God who is in control. It appeals to the pride of mankind instead of to humility. The um, the physical side, there seem to have been apparent transmutations, which would pass medieval assay. There were probably some few tricks that would show it was false. Pope John the 22nd called it counterfeiting. There was a medieval king who put out some order for all alchemic gold to be turned in. I think he was willing to pay for it, no questions asked. Just get this stuff off the street. I read this years ago. Anyway, don't remember the details, but what year or anything. But I read the Turba philosophorum. These people all kind of rant, and these supposed experts disagree on critical points of detail and process and all, but they all basically agree in presenting the picture of a process of taking something, breaking it down to its component parts, doing work on some or all of the parts, or just one or two of them, and then reassembling them. That's, of course, here you've got chemistry, industrial processes, cooking. I think that the whole alchemy thing started when some Egyptian lackey misunderstood or misinterpreted the process he observed of extracting, ancient Egyptians extracting gold traces from slag and uh, getting enough of it into a recognizable form, or observe someone doing this. But that's not transmutation. The mercury vapors, of course, are poisonous. And now the alchemists would talk about philosophical mercury and philosophical sulfur and philosophical fire and all that stuff. And they probably had things that were similar to these things, but were not in fact the same thing, though they may have contained it. Um, this means, of course, dealing with poisonous things. Also, um, ammonium chloride seems to have played a role in some of these processes. And if you get gold chloride, you're a step away from fulminated gold, which is a highly explosive thing, too expensive to be used as an explosive, but it's, I think, stronger than TNT. So you could poison yourself or blow yourself up. Anyway, alchemy in general, appealing to greed, secrecy, elitism, power, and all that stuff, just appeals to the pride of mankind, not to humility. And probably they did stumble on a lot of things besides just straight chemical discoveries. Things that get into the realm of electrostatics and maybe even into straight electricity things on a par with Tesla. I don't know. They would have kept things pretty secret for various excuses, the real one being to maintain power and a sense of being above everyone. So, even if they didn't exert any actual power in the world, they could still feel superior. Um, the business of mercury and something that might contain mercury but is not the same as it, a mercury compound. The Nazis are apparently doing this with the glocke, the bell. This thing was probably worked off of the vimana concept that involved mercury rotating over a iron heating element that released a latent power than the mercury and to make this thing fly. But these pilots who flew it weren't being dissolved into black goo. They presumably, if they were poisoned, it wasn't until much later took effect. My guess is that if whatever they were referring to as mercury was in fact mercury, then either some of what the Nazis were doing was incorrect use of it, double rotating drums probably was overdoing it, or the mixing of that with some other things that were radioactive materials wouldn't have been part of it. They'd have some odd effects, but it wouldn't be the sort of thing that the Hindu Vimana Shastra was talking about. It is not mercury. It is something that might contain some mercury, but is liquid at with minimal heating and would pass through mercury. So, but not as poisonous, not nearly as dangerous. Or this whole banana thing wouldn't have worked. It would have been more the mess that the bell made around it. So, anyway, then the modern experiments with monatomic gold, monatomic silver sounds very much like silver in certain stages of tarnishing, where the color ranges from all kinds of colors, including gold tones and not just black, like we used to thinking of with silver tarnish, and that lightweight, powdery, ormus stuff somebody used that said it augmented all these characteristics, good and bad. So really, it sounds like something to stay away from.